A reading slump is something all readers experience. It's basically a feeling that you want to read, but every book you try doesn't seem interesting enough to captivate you. It's quite a topic in the book community, so I decided to help those who wants to get back to reading. So without further ado, here's a list of top 3 books that will hopefully get you out of a reading slump. Number 3. The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. The Infernal Devices is a fantasy adventure series that features our main character, Tessa Gray. We meet Tessa after she received a note from her brother Nate to meet him in London, and Tessa gets kidnapped on the way. This book series comprises of the 3 main books, which are Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess. So just to give you a bit more info, this series is written in third-person perspective. And here's the first few lines of the first chapter to see if it would interest you. The sisters would like to see you in their chambers, Miss Gray. Tessa set the book she had been reading down on the bedside table and turned to see Miranda standing in the doorway of her small room, just as she did at this time every day, delivering the same message she delivered every day. In a moment, Tessa would ask her to wait in the corridor, and Miranda would leave the room. 10 minutes later, she'd return and say the same thing again. So another thing I almost forgot to mention is that this book is set in Victorian London, and it's in the YA or the young adult category. Also, this is actually a prequel to a series called The Mortal Instruments. If you're pretty new to the book community, then you probably haven't heard of it, but it's a popular series, and The Infernal Devices takes place centuries before that series. So reading this is actually pretty cool, because you could start up the entire Cassandra Clare universe, as in chronological order, this takes place first out of all the series she ever wrote. The Infernal Devices has 2 prominent tropes or themes, which are the found family trope, which pertains to when the main characters become so close, to the point that they feel like a family to each other even if they aren't related by blood, and the second one is the love triangle trope, which I think is self-explanatory. And actually, speaking of the romance aspect, it's a bit prominent, but it doesn't overwhelm the entire plot. It's a 50-50 thing for me, as it felt balanced, and it didn't overhaul the entire plot. Number 2. A Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Like earlier, this is a YA fantasy book, but this time it's not a series. It's a standalone novel, and it talks about our main character, Elisabeth Scrivner, and she is an apprentice in the great library of the owner, called the Director. This library is enchanted, as the books can turn into monsters called Grimoires, and Elisabeth has been wanting this job for a very long time. Things turn to the worse for her though, when she is framed up for murdering the Director, and the entire adventure starts from there. I'm not actually finished with reading this book, but I'm recommending it right now because of how short some chapters are. Like, the main quality of a book that eradicates the reading slump is short chapters, and this book has it. So here's the first lines in the first chapter. Night fell as death rode into the great library of Summershaw. It arrived within a carriage. Elisabeth stood in the courtyard and watched the horses thunder wild-eyed through the gates, throwing froth from their mouths. High above, the last of the sunset blazed on the great library's tower windows, as if the rooms inside had been set on fire, but the light retreated swiftly, shrinking upward, drawing long fingers of shadow from the angels and gargoyles who guarded the library's rain-streaked parapets. So, another thing, the pacing is just right, and it's not even that overwhelming to read. At best, I feel like it's about 300 plus pages, and it isn't that thick in real life. This book is set in an old century universe, the romance is light and not that strong, and this belongs in the following categories: fantasy, adventure, mystery, and YA. It's also filled with plot twists and adventure, and I think all these qualities can shake off a reading slump. And last but not the least, number 1, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Like the 2 books I mentioned earlier, this falls under the YA category along with mystery and adventure. However, this is not a fantasy and more of a contemporary book that follows Avery Grambs, a high school student who inherited Tobias Hawthorne's estate through a will Tobias made. Tobias is a billionaire with 4 grandsons and 2 daughters, and he recently passed away and gave all of his riches to Avery, despite the fact that Avery never remembered talking or meeting Tobias. Tobias loves playing puzzles and mind tricks, and through clues and secret messages, Avery plans to find out why she was even in the will to begin with. This book series comprises of 3 books: The Inheritance Games, The Hawthorne Legacy, and The Final Gambit. So just a trivia, The Final Gambit, or the last book, was just released this year, August, and I haven't actually gotten to that yet, as I got a bit underwhelmed with the series through the second book, The Hawthorne Legacy. But that shouldn't stop you from reading this book, because I feel like it's still going to help you get out of the reading slump. Even though the second book didn't really deliver for me, you can still try it out, and giving it a shot wouldn't really hurt for my opinion. I love the Inheritance Games so much, I mean the first book, that I even bought the paperback edition of it, and as you can see, it's not that long or thick of a book. In fact, even the chapters are so short. By the way, the writing style is in first-person perspective, and here's the first lines. When I was a kid, my mom constantly invented games. The quiet game, the who can make their cookie last longer game. A perennial favorite, the marshmallow game, involved eating marshmallows while wearing puffy Goodwill jackets indoors, to avoid turning on the heat. The flashlight game was what we played when the electricity went out. We never walked anywhere. We raced. The floor was nearly always lava. The primary purpose of pillows was building forts. This book also features the love triangle trope, but the romance is not that prominent, as mystery is the theme and the author made it stay that way. So there you go, 3 books to get you out of a reading slump. How about you? How do you get out of a reading slump? Let me know in the comments down below.